women's movements played a vital role in shaping a democratic South Africa. Women's experiences of gender-based violence during the apartheid struggle were intentionally silenced for the bigger cause, to dismantle apartheid. Extreme levels of gendered and sexualized violence is linked to our complex history of colonialism, imperialism, and apartheid that produced the socio-political conditions that promoted GBV. Class and racial identity still matter. The murder of poor black women often still remains invisible. Yet, women's collective organizing has had impressive achievements through mass mobilization. We combined qualitative and quantitative methods. Quantitative data from large-scale surveys on VAC and VAW to complement our qualitative data. We conducted in-depth interviews with key stakeholders to gain perspectives of the contributions of the women's movement over time. The intergenerational focus group discussions aim to facilitate discussions amongst activists. Centering the experiences and voice of women in this study was paramount to the mixed methodological focus. Data was analyzed across time periods from pre-democracy to contemporary period, using the lens of the various presidencies. Women's activism through the non-partisan Women's National Coalition ensured that gender equality was protected in the Constitution. The first democratic government saw feminist activists enter parliament as parliamentarians and championed the formulation of progressive legislation and policies in support of women's rights. We saw major legislative gains during this period with laws such as Domestic Violence Act of 1998 and the Choice of Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1996 enacted. During the Mbeki era, feminists left the state and we see the emergence of career politicians, with feminist consciousness slowly dissipated and a lack of interest in promoting a feminist agenda noted. The Zuma presidency was marked by a disabling state. The backlash experienced by feminists and gender activists was felt as early as 2005 when Jacob Zuma, the then Deputy President of South Africa, was accused of the rape of a family friend. The rape trial demonstrated the conflict between the rights women are guaranteed under the Constitution and backlash women risk should they challenge the patriarchal order. The acquittal of Jacob Zuma bolstered the view that men are entitled to rape with impunity and demonstrated the extent of the deep connections to the colonial logic of our judicial system. The victories and challenges faced by women's movements are shaped by key political moments and leadership. Despite the obstacles during the Zuma and Mbeki era, Shugumisa and other coalitions formed short-term alliances that mobilized around the sexual offences legislation and other specific issues around legislation. But these alliances dissolved after reaching their goals. Mobilization, starting on campuses around GBV using social media, results in mass mobilization through the #TotalShutdown campaign and highlights the complex intersectional struggle of gender-based violence. Calling on the President to account with 24 demands handed to the President. The first presidential gender-based violence summit was held in November 2018, and an interim steering committee established to spearhead the collaborative process of developing the National Strategic Plan on GBVF. Multiple forms of activism are needed to ensure policy change. Different processes require different forms of activism. But the goal of legislative and policy reform has been central to women's activism and organizing. Post-apartheid saw the rise and consolidation of an organized women's sector. This also meant a competition for resources and professionalization of the sector, leading to fragmentation and isolation within the women's movement. Organizing behind #TotalShutdown campaign again relied on the formation of multiple networks and partnerships, using multiple forms of activism to engage government and build consciousness. Change is not always linear. Policy change is necessary, but not the only ingredient for wider socio-political change. Social movement strategies need to remain flexible and encompassing of different and multiple forms of activisms.